Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here, bringing you another update on these markets. I'm going to talk Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Litecoin, and a couple of other alts I'm watching here, starting to reverse trend. Things are looking interesting going into this B2X fork. So, speaking of the fork, before we get into the charts, a couple of quick announcements. I will most likely be doing a countdown live stream, watch the fork live as it happens, see the action, see what happens going into the fork. I've got a lot of thoughts around the fork. I might have to just do a different video on that altogether. I have several scenarios that I'm working through and will be adjusting my strategy here. We are less than 9 days away from that Bitcoin fork, and things are going to get real interesting. I have some theories about what might happen before the fork and after the fork, and so I think I might have to just do another video. The big assumption is Bitcoin's going to take a correction or a little bit of a pullback post-fork, immediately after the fork, and the altcoins are going to rally. But there are a handful of other scenarios that I think might play out, and so I'll look out for that. I'll be posting a separate video or some sort of discussion along those lines, but the countdown continues. We are 8 days, 15 hours, and 25 minutes away from the estimated block time, which will be the fork block. So stay tuned on that. One more quick announcement, exciting announcements. So for those of you that are new and that are current students of my technical analysis video course, I have updated the video course to include a section, about an hour's worth of video on money management techniques. And I believe money management is really what separates the traders and investors that stick around for the long haul and that make a profit versus those that ultimately lose all their capital. And you've heard it said 90% of traders lose money and go broke. And it's not because they're buying the wrong things or because they don't know how to read a chart or they don't know how to use an indicator. More often than not, it's because they don't have good money management / risk management disciplines in place. And so that's what I talk about in that section. We talk stop losses, diversification, scaling in, position sizing, and just some good tips to help you sustain and stick around for the long haul here. Now, the good news is, if you've already taken this course and you have access to it, that is free. You get that included. Thank you for your support. Thank you for buying the course initially. And if you have not taken the course, it is going up. So the price has changed, slight increase on that, but that does include that new section. So head over to nodeinvestor.com/training and you'll get more information on how to buy that there. So let's get to it. Bitcoin. So what's going on with Bitcoin? Everyone's freaking out. Is it the end of the world? We peaked at $7,500, $7,600. We're having a pullback and there is panic in the streets. But let's be honest, Bitcoin was very extended. In my last video, I was talking about how we were pretty far above this very short-term 10 EMA moving average that I follow, and we're pulling into that. Now, the volume has been heavier than recent, so there's certainly some alertness, right? You can't just discount the pullback, but in the bigger scheme of things, it's not broken any major trends just yet. You should be cautious, but there's not a huge bear trend in work, right? So zooming into the 4-hour chart here, there was talk of a potential head and shoulder pattern forming with the left shoulder being this one here, the head right at that 7,600 mark, and this little tiny shoulder here. I was leaning more towards this was the bigger head, and my concern is, were we going to rally and create another shoulder here, or potentially rally into 7,400 and make that shoulder there? And so those are the key levels that I'm watching right now. It's holding that $7,000 mark. And so Bitcoin has found a lot of support there in recent days. It's looking pretty good, but that's going to be a key level to hold here. The bear case, however, is we've not broken this downtrend, right? We're still creating a series of lower highs, and that's still in play. We've not made a lower low here, but we've got to watch that because we're getting really close to the little trend lines here starting to meet, and that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next day is really where this is going to resolve itself. And so the thing I really want to see is Bitcoin get back above 7,200. That's going to be the first goal. If we zoom into the hourly chart, there was a clear wall of resistance right at that 7,200 mark, with support being just below 7,000. Above 7,200, 7,400 is your next level, and that would really start to invalidate any fears of a big head and shoulder playing out, because if we can get above this 74, that's gonna put in a nice little double bottom low that'll then take us higher. And above 74, we could very quickly see new highs in Bitcoin. And there's still a lot of time left between now and the fork. So we're still a few days out, and 8 days is a lot of time in this market. So a lot can happen. One thing I do want to point out here, and I had pointed this out, sent a tweet out about this channel I've been watching. But if you look at the channel that Bitcoin has been in, it's formed a near perfect parallel channel since the lows right around that 3,000 mark, 3,200 to be exact. And it's hit the top of this channel several times over the last month and a half. And it's still in the channel and still above the 10-period exponential moving average on the daily chart. So the pure technical assessment here is Bitcoin is still in a bull trend, right? But the thing to keep in mind is between now and B2X, I mean, just look at how low it could go and still be fine, right? It can come down to $6,700, $6,800, or it could go as high as 8,000 or anything in between, right? And so anywhere in this little box here is still Bitcoin is fine, right? And you can see where there's just a lot of time left between now and the Bitcoin fork. And we could see it go over 8,000 between now and then. We can see it just kind of stay sideways here. If it starts to breach this channel to the downside, that's going to be the first real big red flag to keep an eye on. And if it happens, I guarantee you it'll probably happen quick. We tend to see that happen in Bitcoin where you see the sudden drops and maybe a little bit of a bounce. So that's the big level that I'm watching. This upper trend line, which is today, still down at around 64, 6,500. So that's quite a ways down still. The 10 EMA is probably my first trigger. If it gets below 7,000 near term, you're going to want to start to get a little bit more cautious on that. But in the bigger scheme of things, just keep an eye on that channel. It's just real interesting that we've been following that channel perfectly since that low around 3,200. Let's take a look at some of these other ones. So Bitcoin Cash is one everyone's been watching here. It's been very strong, very resilient here. Pausing right now a little bit. Also has a lower support trend line, which is getting very close right now. So I'd be watching that. This is the chart versus Bitcoin. This is not Bitcoin Cash USD, but versus Bitcoin, it's getting real tight and quiet here. However, on the 4-hour chart, it does have a little bit of a double top that it put in right around 0.095. So that's going to be the first level of resistance to get above. But looking at the daily chart, this is just a very strong chart. I mean, there's just no way around that. If it breaks this trend line, then all bets are off. But for now, it's looking like it's a nice pause. Volume's declining a little bit here, but I'd be watching this one for a potential break to the upside after this pause here. Ethereum. So Ethereum has been tightening up here at the lows. And let me clear these here for us. And one thing you'll notice, a lot of these altcoins have a very similar pattern. So when you look at the altcoins versus Bitcoin, the macro trend, the overall trend, for the most part, it's still down. I mean, that's clearly the trend that's been in place for quite some time now, 6-7 weeks now. And this is no exception. Versus Bitcoin, everything has been overall underperforming significantly. But if you start to zoom in a little bit and start to look at some of the near-term action, we're starting to see more of a sideways rounding out pattern. Let me hide the volume here so it's easier to see. But you can see versus Bitcoin, for the last couple of days, basically since November began, you're starting to see these things kind of hold these lows. And some of them are starting to break out above this near-term resistance. So I'm starting to watch this pattern show up in a lot of these coins where they're just going sideways here versus Bitcoin, just kind of holding their own now. And they're bouncing back and forth in a pretty tight range overall. But on the daily chart, still hasn't gotten above that 10 EMA, and many of them are getting right there. So it's going to be interesting to see if Bitcoin rallies over the next couple of days. Will these alts just hit that wall and go another leg further? Or are we going to see a pop to the upside ahead of the B2X fork? And so personally, it's going to be very selective because not all the alts are very strong here, but I am leaning towards we're going to see a pop to the upside. But I'm not going to take any action just yet until we see some confirmation. The thing right now is it's still very much a trader's market when it comes to these altcoins. And you're seeing a lot of these where they pump and then they have a nice little rally and then they sell off the next day and it's just cycling through coins. And so right now, if you happen to catch some of those, most of them, for me at least, have been very quick trades and then back into Bitcoin. On my long-term portfolio, I am starting to pick up some of these altcoins here. I'm starting to look at Dash. I'm looking at Decred. Got some Ethereum. I had some Litecoin already, but it's moving big today. We'll look at that. And so there's certainly some more attractive buys here at these lows. So what I would be doing is paying attention to these type of patterns that are starting to show this real tight action. And if you're looking to make trades or entries, the best bet right now is just waiting for confirmation. So in the case of Ethereum, right, you're going to be looking for confirmation of a move up above this 0.043 level or so, with, watching the downside channel to see, make sure that holds. And you'll see some of the other charts, very similar pattern where it's just this sideways channel and you have a very clear overhead resistance and a very clear downside support level that's held several times here in the last several days. This is Litecoin BTC here. You can see that big volume move to the upside. Again, we were watching that same channel. You can see that clear overhead resistance. The pattern really started to tighten up, put in a little bit of a handle, and that was a clear breakout, and now it's starting to rally. It did get overextended pretty quickly, but that's a nice little breakout on Litecoin. If you look at Litecoin versus USD, you can see a similar downtrend that was being watched here, and then just a big pop to the upside. Massive volume coming in on that breakout, so that's a nice breakout here. Let's see how far it goes. I know it's based on news and it being added to an exchange, but just technically speaking, very nice breakout on Litecoin. Another one is Dash, and so I covered this one several weeks ago, and the thing to notice on Dash is there's been this very clear declining downtrend that's been an area of resistance every time it was hit. And that changed yesterday, and we saw a big pop to the upside, good volume coming in. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this breakout holds, because that could start to change the tune on Dash. And we were getting very close. The lower side also had a trend, and we were basically right there. It was going to move one way or the other here soon. It's good to see it move to the upside. You can see on the 4-hour bar, a lot of volume coming in. It's getting very volatile here, but so far it's holding that breakout. And so I'd be watching Dash here because that's a significant break of a downtrend, a very long downtrend. And so on the USD chart, you're going to want to see Dash. If it can start to get back above 300, might see a nice little run on Dash here. So let's cycle through some of these other altcoins, because I want to show you that same pattern that we're seeing in many of these here. Lisk was one that was putting in a tight pattern and then broke out here. And so you can see I'm watching this potential target, and it's bouncing right into that right now, and it had that really nice double bottom pattern. And look at right before the breakout, how tight it starts to get right near that point, and then the volume comes in and pushes it right above. And right now it's just starting to rally, volumes coming in. Another example was Quantum. So we were watching Quantum, same thing, had this little flag, put in a little tight bull flag, and then had a little bit of a break, and just right now just kind of marching up. And you're seeing a lot of these start to do this here recently. So here's the stellar chart on Poloniex. You can see versus Bitcoin, again, very clear overhead resistance. Came right to it and then moved above, came back, tested that overhead, and now it's starting to look like it's going up. Now, these are not just exploding higher per se, but it's an encouraging sign to see that the alts are starting to get a little bit of a bid, and you're starting to see this more and more. I believe we saw that on UBIC today, edging out of resistance here after tightening up very nicely. Big volume coming in, so that's what you want to see when it starts to clear, because so far the last couple of weeks have been mostly fake out breakouts. They move out, big volume, and then they just fade away within the next day or even hours sometimes. And what you want to see is these little breakouts on volume that either pause or hold and then start to head higher. We saw it on Monero here. Monero had that big breakout, pulled back, constructive pullback right to the 10 EMA, starting to move higher. Very similar move to what Ethereum Classic did not too long ago. So if we go to Ethereum Classic, you can see same thing. It had that big breakouts, put in a little bit of a bull flag right to that 10 EMA, and since then had another leg run. Pulling in now, but these are very nice, especially if you're trading these. You can get in on the breakouts of that declining trend or right when it touches that moving average, and that can give you another little run. Following that bull flag breakout, Ethereum Classic gave you another 30% or so to the upside. Let me cycle through a few more just to kind of just show you the same trend that we're seeing overall. So let's take a look at NEO. How's NEO looking? I've got my charts all marked up because I'm looking at different levels. So the thing with NEO, everyone's been asking me about NEO. What do I think about NEO? Again, it's got this little channel that it's in, and I'm looking for a break above this. So on the BTC above 38, 39 or so. But the key resistance level is going to be that 42, 43, or I guess it would be 430 on the Satoshi level, 430K Satoshi, because that was a key support level that NEO broke down from, and pretty big. And so on the daily charts, it had held that level multiple times, broke below it. Getting back above that, it's going to be a test. Near term, First test is going to be that 38.39, and that will also correlate with that 10 EMA that's declining on the daily chart here. But you're going to ultimately want to see get back above this resistance level. 10x is another one, still in a declining trend here in near term, has not broken above that, is starting to round out the bottom here a little bit. If you look at the 4-hour charts, some volumes coming in right at that test point. And again, like many of these here, a very clear horizontal resistance line that you're going to want to watch. If it starts to get above these, those are good first signs that the trend is changing on some of these. And finally, OmiseGo. A lot of you have asked me about this one. What's going on with OmiseGo? And it's pretty much the same story, right? The downtrend is still in place. If we look at the daily chart here, the downtrend is there. I mean, there's no arguing that it's there, it's in place, but like many of these, you're seeing this sideways channel that's starting to hold back and forth, back and forth. So once we start to break above these little channels here, that's going to be good for some of these altcoins, and that's what you're going to want to see. Now, what we're not going to want to see is for all of these sideways channels to just be these drops, go sideways, and then they break below the support. And that's yet to be seen if that happens. A lot of it's going to depend on what Bitcoin does ultimately. If Bitcoin starts to rally, gets back above 7,400 and makes new highs, it's going to be very curious to see how these alts react. If they hold par and just stay sideways, that's going to be a good indicator that they're going to get ready to run here soon. Best case scenario is Bitcoin goes up and the alts start to follow suit like they used to, but I don't think we're going to get that lucky. I think they're going to be this back and forth movement going into the fork. So that's going to be the thing to pay attention to. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Just want to give you that quick update again to recap on Bitcoin, the levels to watch on the downside. That 7,000 to 6,900 mark or so is going to be a key support level we need to hold. And getting above 7,200 is going to be a good sign, good first sign that it's finding a low here, and maybe we'll start to put a little consolidation here going into the fork. And ultimately, 7,400, I'd really start to get excited that Bitcoin's going to make new highs if we can get back above that level. So until next time, take care.